So what happens when you've hit rock bottom and you feel like there's nowhere left to go? This is a question I've been thinking about really for the last week. And this continual story, really two stories, have come to mind. It has to do with Peter and the fishes. We see one at the beginning when Peter is called to follow Christ, and we see one at the end, and they kind of mirror each other. And I think in a lot of ways, this has something to teach us about when we feel like we're down in the bottom of a hole that we can't get out of, that we don't know where to turn. I think Peter's story tells us exactly where we should be. It starts in Luke chapter 5. Peter already has an idea about Jesus. Jesus has already been in his home. He's healed his mother-in-law of her fever. Peter has heard him speak, but yet this isn't the point that Jesus has called them to be his disciples yet. And Jesus is ministering in Galilee, and there's a crowd that begins to follow him because of all the healings, the signs, the wonders, as the Bible talks about, that he started. And he ends up on the bank of the Sea of Galilee. And there is Peter in his boat. He has been fishing all night and caught nothing. As a fisherman for his business, he is looking for income, for stability, for something going on in his family. We know that his mother-in-law had been sick. And here is Simon Peter. He is working. He is trying to do what he can. And we see Jesus come, and obviously he's familiar with Jesus at this point. But like I said, his belief is not yet really there, even with everything that he's seen. And Jesus is teaching. He asks Peter to take him out away from the shore just a little bit so he can speak to the crowd, as the crowd is beginning to press in on them. And then he tells Peter to push out into the deep and to drop his nets. Now, Peter's a fisherman. He knows what it's like to fish the Sea of Galilee. And in the heat of the day, fish always go to the bottom. It's not a great time for fishing. That's one of the reasons when I was a kid with my dad that we would leave so early in the morning. We'd be sure that we were out in the boat looking for the fish very early in really the cool of the day. And that's why so many people, like Peter, would fish at night. And so he tells them to drop the nets, and he ends up doing so a little bit like, yeah, I'll do this. It's stupid, but I'm going to do it anyway because you ask and because of some respect that Simon Peter had for Jesus at this point. And he does so. And, of course, the fish overwhelm him. They come into the nets, and he ends up having to call friends over to help him. They fill up both boats, and they're almost to the point of sinking. There's so many fish there. And then we see Peter as he gets up from this event. And here's what he says. It says, when Simon Peter saw it, he fell down in Jesus' knees, saying, "Depart from me, for I am a sinful man, O Lord." For he and all that were with him were astonished at the catch of fish which they had taken. So here is Simon, and he realizes that God has blessed him, that Jesus has blessed him with this catch. And he knows he's overwhelmed because he knows what he is, that he's undeserving of this. And why does Simon Peter feel this way? Well, obviously, I think for him, for whatever was going on in his life at the time, we don't know. The chosen picked out some things had to do with taxes and things for that. But we know because of Simon's response that something deep down was going on with Simon Peter. And then we see this mirror. So here we are at the beginning. Peter is downtrodden. He's destroyed. And yet Jesus lifts him up. And then in John chapter 21, we see again that here is Peter. He is overwhelmed. He is at the bottom. Jesus has died on the cross. By this point, he has been resurrected. This is after Jesus has already appeared to them in the room. But here, Peter is still crushed by the events that took place. By Jesus, obviously, being crucified, by Peter not feeling worthy because of his denial of Christ. And once again, we see Peter doing what he does. He has gone back to fishing, not fishers of men, but gone back to be a fisher of fish. And once again, he's having no luck. And Jesus appears on the bank and shouts out to him and says, look here, John chapter 21, verse number 6. And he said to them, cast the net on the right side of the boat and you will find some. So they cast, and now they were not able to draw it in because of the multitude of fish. That's a simple verse, but it actually says a lot. Jesus tells Peter to cast on the other side of the boat. Now, I don't know if you've ever watched people cast nets, but there's a technique to it. There's a style to it. Here you have a net, and you need, as you throw it to expand out wide. They're giant circular or oval nets, depending on how they're exactly designed and how much they have been repaired. But as you throw these out, you need them to expand out. And if you've ever watched people do this, you'll notice one particular thing. They always throw the net on the same side. Why? Well, think about us throwing a ball, hitting a baseball, swinging a golf club. We're either right-handed or we're left-handed. And the things that we do automatically, we do the same way, over and over and over again. And we get good at it. And we know the technique, we know what may be done, but if we try and switch from batting right-handed to batting left-handed, yes, there's a few that can do it, but for the most part, you can't. You may be a great pitcher in the major league and thrown a ball all your life, but if I ask you to throw left-handed instead of right-handed, when you're a right-handed pitcher, you'll look like a little toddler out there trying to throw the ball. Right now, you've learned how to sign your name. It doesn't matter whether you have a cheap pen or an expensive pen. You can take with your dominant hand and you can sign your name, and it's going to look like you. You've been signing that name for years, decades even. Now switch hands and sign your name. Does it look the same? No, it's uncomfortable. We would think it was crazy. And here Jesus asked Peter to do the same thing, to do something else that's crazy, to cast his nets on the other side of the boat. An awkwardness, something that, why should it matter? And yet Peter does that, and once again, the nets are full, the boats are full, and Peter understands that Jesus is still there to bless him. So what does this mean for us? What does this lesson teach us about how we should respond, or how we should teach people to respond when they're at rock bottom? Number one, I think, is action, is something to do. Jesus didn't have the fish start jumping in the boat. Jesus didn't fix the problem while they were out on the boats. Obviously, especially in the book of John, Jesus sees the struggle. He could have just had the nets filled and then pull up and be reminded of something before, but he had them take some type of action. The second thing is it was uncomfortable action. It wasn't something that they wanted to do, that felt natural, that was within human reasoning at the time. And yet the most important thing, I think, for Peter was that he took the action. He did the thing. And then in each instance, he immediately came before Jesus to confess who he was and what he was and how he was. And in both instances, Jesus responds with restoration, with a task, with success, gathering more than they ever had before. Even in John, we see in the descriptions that it appears that there were even more fish than there was the first time. They couldn't even get it all in the boats and had to drag it to shore, still in the nets after they had filled their boats. And I think it is important for us to remember that even in the times when we are at that bottom, we need to listen. We can't get our way out on our own, but we can with Jesus' help if we'll listen and we'll do and we'll take the actions that he says to take. I hope you've enjoyed this devotion today, and I look forward to seeing you again next time.